Talks between Russia, Ukraine and the United States have begun in Abu Dhabi. It's the first time officials from Russia, Ukraine and the US are known to have met face-to-face for negotiations since Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now, the talks are taking place after the US envoy, Steve Witkoff, and Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, travelled to Moscow, where they spoke with Russian leader Vladimir Putin. A Kremlin official described those talks as useful. Moscow has since repeated its demand that Ukraine hand over territory in the eastern Donbas region that is still controlled by Kyiv. Let's bring in DW's Rebecca Ritters, who's in the Ukrainian capital. Welcome, Rebecca. How hopeful is Ukraine about these latest talks?
Well, Phil, every iteration of this journey towards a hopeful peace does bring hope to people of Ukraine, to the Ukrainian side. We heard from President Zelenskyy after he met with President Trump of the US in Davos that, that he hoped these trilateral meetings would be a further step towards peace. But he tempered that by saying, but of course, anything can happen. And I think that's really the sentiment, the feeling that Ukrainians have felt all the way along. This definitely seems like it's the closest, perhaps, that we've been. But as you just mentioned there, Moscow saying that they maintain their demands for the full Donbas region, and that is certainly a red line on the Ukrainian side. So whether we'll see peace in the next 24 hours, I think, is very unrealistic. Whether it's a step towards peace, I think everybody, particularly Ukrainians, are very hopeful for that.
President Zelenskyy has said Russia needs to be ready for compromises. Has Ukraine indicated the areas where it's willing to compromise?
Well, Ukraine has already compromised. In the beginning, it was certainly much more firm about these territorial claims. It was, still wanting to stand strong about joining NATO. These are things that President Zelenskyy would be willing to walk away from, it appears, in an eventual peace deal. But this issue of the Donbas and these territorial claims being made by Russia are a red line. That is something that the Ukrainians don't want to give up. And even though Ukrainians themselves, of course, are desperately seeking peace, they want it more than anything else, a large majority still don't want to give up territory in order to have that peace. They see a totally different perspective, that if they give up that territory, it will only encourage Moscow to try to push harder to attack from that area. So there are various things being discussed, this demilitarized zone in the Donbas potentially, but whether or not the two sides can agree on, a final kind of outline of how that peace will look like, particularly in that much fought after Donbas, of course, remains to be seen.
Okay, thanks for that, Rebecca. DW's Rebecca Ritters in Kyiv. Life under constant Russian bombardment means many Ukrainians are living without basics like heating amid freezing winter temperatures. The country's grid operator says the energy situation has significantly worsened following recent Russian air attacks. The European Union is sending hundreds more generators to Ukraine to power hospitals, shelters and other key infrastructure.
This old railway carriage is now being used as a place to keep warm. Power and heating have been cut off across much of the city of Brovary, close to the capital Kyiv, after more Russian airstrikes. That's forced some schools to close.
It is very cold in our classroom right now because of the power cuts, and perhaps that's why our teachers decided to give us an interactive lesson.
Across Kyiv, heated tents are also providing warmth, as well as hot food. Freezing temperatures and frequent blackouts have left many struggling. In our building, the power mostly comes on at night after a missile strike. And since there's no way to cook warm food for my child, we're forced to go to places like this because they have hot meals here. Russia has been targeting Ukrainian infrastructure, including power plants. Despite the sub-zero temperatures, maintenance crews are doing what they can to restore power.
Дуже сильно багато пошкоджень.
There is a lot of damage that happens over and over again. As soon as we fix the power, the attacks start again.
Далі все по новій.
Those attacks continue across Ukraine. This week, a Russian drone hit an apartment block in Dnipro, in the center of the country, leaving several injured. And 13 people were injured, including children, when a missile struck near residential buildings southwest of the city. But for most Ukrainians, their most pressing fight is against the extreme cold, as Russian-forced blackouts leave their country in the dark.
Kira Rudik is a member of parliament in Kyiv and leads Ukraine's opposition Holos party. Welcome back to DW. Let's start with these talks. Does the fact that Ukrainian and Russian delegations are actually taking part in the same talks with the US rather than the US shuttling between them, does that indicate some sort of progress?
Hello, Phil, and thank you so much for having me. I wouldn't call it a progress because it falls down to Russia's strategy to drag in the talks and escape sanctions that President Trump threatened them with. So they will be showing very small movements, and they will be trying to just win some time. And they have been, unfortunately, successful doing that, successful fooling President Trump. We do not believe that Russia has any intention on stopping and any intention in signing a deal or any intention in finding a solution and ending the war.
Right. And this is the tactic that we have seen, constant talks and no concessions from Russia. But let me just press you on the fact that at least this time, you're all taking part in the same talks rather than, as I say, rather than this happening separately. You think this is just the same game with a different face on it?
That could be a worse game for Ukraine, because being in the room with Russia and with the United States doesn't exactly mean that we are in the room with our enemy and our ally. This is why I would prefer that European representation would be in the room with Ukraine, especially when we are talking about the security of European continent. It is critical that there is not mutual pressure from the US delegation, who obviously want the war to end and get over with it, and Russia, who have a very clear demands that definitely are not in Ukraine's interest.
Right. So just to be clear, you no longer see the United States as an ally?
We know that the United States is our strong partner. However, in this negotiation, we have seen them putting pressure on Ukraine, but have not seen them putting pressure on Russia. This is indeed unfortunate, but it's obvious reality.
The Donbas issue looks intractable. Russia wants the bits that Ukraine still controls. So if territory can't be conceded, what do you think what would you consider to be a workable compromise?
The workable compromise will be a solution where Ukraine military shouldn't step back and allow Russia to get into the territories that Ukraine controls. So there were different solutions, but the devil is in details. And these solutions were like, for example, having a demilitarized zone. Then there is a question who will be controlling it. And you see that we have a massive frontline length right now, more than 1,000 kilometers. So who can control that? Or it could be a free economic zone. But again, the main question is who is ready to put their military into harm's way? And Russia has made it clear many times that they shouldn't accept international forces in Ukraine. Right.
So, and the solutions, the potential solutions that you mentioned there, this notion of an economic zone or a demilitarized zone, that is based on the idea that Ukraine does not give up the territory. It just, I don't know, you learn to live together, but that territory is still Ukraine. Russia doesn't get it.
Absolutely. Well, Russia shouldn't be getting it. And I will tell you more, Phil, the issue that we are facing. Russia has added 4 of our regions that it doesn't control right now, but they added our Ukrainian regions into their constitution. Right now, in this negotiation, Russia as an aggressor is trying to pressure us into taking what they were not able to take by force, which is, again, absolutely unbelievable how one would demand something like that. But again, if we forget about it for 1 second, what would happen with the 3 other regions? Is Russia going to change their constitution back and give up on their plan to take over? Or we do not hear the answer to that. This is why I do not believe there would be any sustainable or any significant output of the talks.
Understood. I'd like to play you a clip of President Zelenskyy speaking on Thursday in Davos, and then we'll talk again.
Instead of becoming a truly global power, Europe remains a beautiful but fragmented kaleidoscope of small and middle powers. Instead of taking the lead in defending freedom worldwide, especially when America's focus shifts elsewhere, Europe looks lost, trying to convince the US president to change. But he will not change.
Kira Rudik, one way of reading what President Zelenskyy said there is that Ukraine cannot rely on its European allies and is going to have to accept what Washington negotiates for it. Is that how you read what the president said yesterday?
Phil, President sounds desperate, and he has all the rights to be. We have used all the arguments that we had. All the arguments, all the facts are on the table about that Russia has attacked us, about people dying every single day, about us freezing to death, about people having no electricity for days and no heating when there's minus 20 outside. There is not much more that we can say to our partners, to our friends, to the people of the free world. So you already have all the facts to make the decision, and for some reason the real decisions are not being made. And for some reason, the sanctions are still working halfway. For some reason, Europe keeps buying gas and oil from Russia. For some reason, shadow fleet still operates. So we don't know what else can we say. And in this matter, I understand where the president is coming from. We don't know which attack will be the final thing to destroy our energy infrastructure, which will create the most massive humanitarian disaster. We have people who didn't have heating for more than 2 weeks and who is spending their days and nights in the shelter. We are out of words right now. There has been 4 years since full-scale invasion started, and if it was not enough to make the right decisions, to stand united, to fight back Russia, and to make those decisions that are really crucial about the air defense and about Europe's security, I'm out of words, and I think President is out of words too.
And just on that, the Russian tactic, as well as stalling in negotiations, on the battlefield, it seems to be just keep fighting, keep losing thousands of troops until Ukraine is exhausting. So without America's full backing and with Europe failing to take up the slack, can Ukraine outlast Russia?
We will do our best. We will try. We never said that we can do it alone, but unfortunately what we see right now is that moving halfway, we will not be able to have a strong position. That's why I hope President Zelenskyy was able to have some output, to have some perhaps emotional movement from the partners, from the allies, pushing them to do the right decision, to make the right decisions. We understand that it's perhaps useless to be talking about the values of human life to the new American administration and hoping that they will understand that this is the right thing to do. They are operating a very different way. However, this is our final hope, trying to wake up the people who still hope that it will just pass. It will not pass. Unfortunately, the war will be getting closer to Europe than anybody anticipated. And we are holding off the horde from the east for as long as we can, but we also cannot do it forever.
Thank you for joining us, Kira, and we wish you well. Ukrainian opposition leader Kira Rudik.
Thank you.